What's happening, my friends? Paul here with Kali Center. Today, my training focus is transference of skill. Let me show you what I mean by that. So in Kali, we have this principle called transference of skill. And what that means is when we're learning a particular skill in one area of Kali, say on the single stick or the single bolo, then we transfer that knowledge and we transfer that physical skill to the other areas of Kali, like the double stick, the knife, the Espada, Daga, the staff, sometimes even the empty hands. So basically you can think of Kali as being a complete art, that it's one system that will apply across all categories of fighting. So for instance, if we look at the basic strikes on the single stick, so we have our basic attacks, say our angle 1, angle 2, angle 3, and our angle 4 right here. All right, we'll keep it nice and simple for the video. This is the basic attacks on the single weapon. So how do we cover these basic lines and these basic attacks if I'm to transfer that skill to the double stick? Well, let's get two sticks in our hands and take a look. So let's go and cover all 4 of these corners and these diagonal strikes with the double sticks. We can kind of do this one of two ways. We can do this in a very simple, easy, direct way where we have our single fluid strikes just like this. Even though this is an angle 4 and an angle 1, an angle 4 and an angle 1, they're technically covering those lines, those same exact lines. That's one way that we can think of that transference of skill. But let's make sure we're actually using the leverage of the angle 2 and the leverage of the angle 1. So if we start off here in the chamber position, I can go into my standard 8 count. Some people will call this a standard 6, depending on how you want to count it. But now we're utilizing the angle 1 and the angle 2, and then the 4s are covering the low angles, the 4s and the 3 lines. All right, so this would be a little bit more of a complete transference of skill right there. Now we can also still fire in all our 3 and 4s right there as well. So we're looking at how do we cover those lines with the double weapons, which is the transference from the single weapon here, or possibly working the single off of the left hand. So a lot of ways we could transfer that knowledge and transfer those skills from the single stick to the double stick. Let's take a look at the Espada Daga. So on the Espada Daga, we have a long weapon and a short weapon. So the manipulation is going to be different than having 2 sticks or 2 bolos. Because there's so much less manipulation on the knife than there is on the Espada, the transfer of skill is going to be very close to the single weapon, and the Daga is going to be doing some more like insert type of things, where it will be assisting the long weapon. So a couple ways that we could transfer that skill from the single weapon to the Espada Daga. We can maintain open striking, which is 1, 2, high jab, 3, 4, low jab. 1, 2, high thrust, 3, 4, low thrust. You could jab it, you can thrust it. Or we can go into the transition of the Daga to the backhand side, which will give us a little bit more protection with the Daga, or more opportunities to protect ourselves, the close quarter targets with the Daga. And that looks like this: passing the Daga through, hit the 2, there's that high jab, 3, 4, and that low jab. Now we're just going to pass that Daga, transferring it to the backhand side, because now I got way more coverage for my face, my eyes, my neck with the left hand there. Still working on our angle 1, 2, 3, and 4 from our basic attacks. And then of course, you can fire more manipulations with the Daga. Now what about the knife, or the single knife in this case? Same things, right? We have the 1, the 2, up the 3. Now right here is where things get interesting on the knife. We typically will come back down on the angle 1 instead of coming up on the angle 4. And the reason being is that when you strike the angle 4 on the knife, there's really no advantage to this angle on the knife. You're just leading with your forearm. You don't have the length of the weapon to get out in front of you for protection. So you're really just giving a lot more surface for your opponent to cut, and you're not really getting any kind of bang for this particular angle. So coming back down the angle 2 gives you more projection of your weapon, and if anything, at least you're still protecting your vitals. But that's why we have that transference is a little bit different on the knife, where there's no angle 4. Now, it's not to say that there's no angle 4 in the fighting. There is when you're getting into corto and extreme corto as the fight is getting closer and closer. But at long range, there's just no advantage. It's just too disadvantageous to fire that angle 4. Hopefully that makes sense. You got to play around with it and experiment with it to really understand it. But we do have an angle that covers that line, which is the low jab. And that's getting the actual blade of the weapon out in front of you as fast as possible and really eliminating as much exposure of that form as we possibly can. Again, it's just not serving any benefit on the angle 4 from that long range. Don't mistake that, as I did say, the angle 4 comes into play when you start getting in real tight. So let's take a look at one more weapon in the transference of skill here on these basic strikes, which is our bancao, or the staff. Or you can even play this on the sibat, or the spear. So taking a look at the single end fighting method, which we're using one end, it's a little bit more like a spear fighting. Right? We have our angle 1, our angle 2, our 3, and our 4, just like that. 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So transfers over pretty much the same as the single stick right there. You could swing this all the way through. That's for maximum power, maybe a finishing strike. Otherwise, we'll strike that and bounce it back, what we call a V strike. And then we can strike that 2 and then quickly come back up on that angle 3 and 4. Now, if we go into more of the bancao grip, where we're gripping the middle of the weapon, this gives us the double end staff fighting method. And we have our 1, our 2, our 3, and our 4. So down on the angle 1 and 2, upwards on the angle 3 and 4. So what about the empty hands of Kali? Well, in Kali, we have two methods of empty hand striking. We have the closed fist striking, and we have the open hand striking. So if we look at these diagonal strikes on these basics, we can come down on our slaps and hacks or hammer fists right there. And then coming upwards, we can come up with the bolo punches, or we can come up with the elbows, right? So we can utilize the elbows on all of these angles as well. Or the open hand strikes, or the closed hand fists right here. Boom. So still covering all of those 4 diagonal lines, from the high line going downwards, the low line coming upwards. So then from there, you can just play around with all your different combinations, right? So as you're working on your broken strikes and your circular strikes and your horizontals and your vertical strikes, right? You can start looking at in your own training and playing around and experimenting, what does that transference of skill look like and feel like from whatever combination you want to work on, and then transfer that combination, that skill, that energy to the other areas of Kali. So that's what I'm working on today. A little bit of transference of skill, having fun, and it's always a good little explorative kind of session for the day. Mixing things up, keeping training fresh. If you want to know more about Kali, take your training to another level, head over to KaliCenter.com, check out my online training programs, check out my upcoming events, seminars, and training camps, and maybe I'll see you at one of those where we can meet face-to-face and get some real training in. Otherwise, I'll catch you back here next time, my friend.